Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. Welcome to UMT Massive Open Online Course. I am Fatimah Shahman, your lecturer for today's class. In a previous lecture, you have been introduced to the nature and classification of aquaculture activities. You also learned about the three phases in production cycle of aquaculture business. Today, let us learn about the initial investment in the business. The learning outcomes of today's presentation will be to identify the initial investment of aquaculture business, and secondly, to identify what constitutes as assets or expenses in the initial investment of aquaculture business. Right. I am going to discuss about two things, assets and expenses in the initial investment. The rule of thumb is that any costs that meet the definition of asset will be capitalized and then sent to the statement of financial position. And secondly, any costs that do not fall into the assets category will be expensed off and then charged to the profit and loss statement. Before we look at this issue in detail, let us now define initial investment. Initial investment cost is the cost of setting up the aquaculture venture and shall consist of all expenditures whose incurrence are directly attributable or can be allocated on a reasonable basis to bring the venture to its operational conditions. These are the recognition criteria of assets in the initial investments of any business. Accounting could never be simpler if you know all its tips. What are they? First, you should know the recognition criteria of assets. How to do that? We should refer to the conceptual framework of accounting. The conceptual framework prescribes assets as any item that brings future economic benefits controlled by the entity in which value can be measured reliably. So the first question is there any inflow of future economic benefit resulted from the current transaction or activities? Second, are the costs directly attributable to the particular assets? Let me take right to use land as an example. Alright, you own a piece of land. The land is your asset because it brings future economic benefits to your business in the long run. However, how about the right to use the land? Say for example, you have to incur another 1,000 ringgit to pay to the land office for the right to dig ponds on the land. Should the 1,000 ringgit be considered as your assets? The answer is yes, because the money we pay is directly attributable to the land, and thus the cost should be capitalized. The question of whether the amount can be measured reliably is the measurement criteria. Therefore, any cost that you pay in monetary value shows that the price of the activity can be measured reliably. Let us now look at the examples of assets in the initial investment. Cost of acquisition of land, licenses and rights. Cost of land clearing and other land improvements. Excavation and construction costs of ponds, canals, cages, roads and gateways. Construction costs of farm buildings, farm premises and other farm infrastructures. Cost of farm machinery and equipment such as water pumps, generators, feeding machines, feed mixers, wheel pedals, refrigerators and nets. Cost of transportation vehicles such as boats, trucks and cars. These investment costs, initial and subsequent, are subject to the provisions of MFRS 116, property, plant and equipment. These initial expenditures shall be capitalized as fixed assets and appropriately classified. Subsequent expenditures and improvements incurred shall be charged to income unless they increase the future benefits from the existing assets. These costs should be treated as expenses in the initial investment. To conclude, initial investments are costs of activities that agropreneurs have to pay at the beginning of the business. These costs can either be treated as expenses or assets. Assets should be disclosed in the statement of financial position, whereas expenses will be charged in the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. That's all for today. The next video, we are going to discuss issues in the aquaculture business. See you soon. Thank you.